What if the life you thought was perfect came crashing down in a single, heart-stopping moment? Gerard, a devoted husband and dedicated teacher, never saw it coming. His days were filled with predictable routines, his evenings spent nurturing a love he thought was unshakable. But one ordinary Tuesday turned into a nightmare that shattered his world. A small, unexpected change in schedule set off a chain of discoveries, clues that pointed to the unthinkable. How do you confront betrayal when it blindsides you? And more importantly, how do you pick up the pieces of a life you thought you knew? This is Gerard's story, raw, emotional, and filled with resilience. Stay with me as we uncover every twist and turn in his journey to rebuild his life. The sound of the school bell had become a rhythm in my life, a predictable tune marking the start and end of every day. Teaching elementary school was rewarding, yet it came with its own grind. Tuesday evenings were particularly structured, weekly, meetings that stretched till 6 p.m. By the time I arrived home at 7 p.m., the day's chaos seemed to dissolve into the comfort of routine. Dinner preparation, checking my lesson plans, and tidying up had become second nature, a way to wind down. But lately, the stillness of my evenings felt heavier, as if something unspoken lingered just beneath the surface. Each week, the pattern repeated. I would step into our small but cozy home, calling out for Terry. Her absence during my busy evenings never raised suspicion. Why would it? I had convinced myself that trust was the foundation of everything we'd built. My schedule was as transparent as the glass on our living room windows. There was no room for doubt. Or so I thought. Dinner was my domain. I loved the simplicity of cooking, the feeling of providing. While I stirred sauces and sautéed vegetables, I imagined us laughing over a meal, reconnecting. Yet, the laughter had waned. Terry seemed distant, lately, retreating into her own world. I brushed it off, blaming stress, work, or just life pulling us in separate directions. It was easier to rationalize than to admit something felt off. That Tuesday, like so many before it, I had no reason to suspect anything unusual. My day had been long but fulfilling, and I was looking forward to unwinding at home. Little did I know, the cracks in my carefully structured routine would soon reveal themselves in ways I could never have anticipated. Terry's laugh used to echo through the house, a warm melody that could lighten even my toughest days. Lately, though that laugh felt like a distant memory, I kept telling myself that relationships go through phases, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away. My response? Effort. I doubled down on what I could control. Cooking her favorite meals, folding the laundry just the way she liked, and carving out time for us despite my busy schedule. But no matter how hard I tried, there was a wall between us, one I couldn't quite see but could always feel. Each night I'd prepare dinner while she took her evening shower. It was a habit we'd fallen into, a rhythm that gave me a sense of purpose. Setting the table, lighting a candle or two, and trying to create a warm atmosphere was my way of saying, I'm still here, still trying. And yet, her eyes told a different story. Tired, distracted, almost distant. I'd ask about her day and she'd answer. But the conversations felt surface level, like a script we were both reading from. I remember one evening when I planned a romantic dinner. Candles, soft music, her favorite dessert. I thought it might bring us closer, rekindle that spark. But as we sat across from each other, the silence between bites spoke louder than any words. She smiled, thanked me, and even complimented the meal. But it felt hollow. I didn't want to admit it, but a part of me was beginning to wonder if I was holding on to something that had already slipped through my fingers. Still, I kept pushing forward, convincing myself that all relationships require work. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd catch myself replaying moments from our early days together, searching for clues about where things had gone wrong. I wanted to believe that my efforts mattered, that they could make a difference. Yet deep down, I sensed that my world was about to change in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. That Tuesday started like any other. Classrooms bustling with Energy, children's laughter filling the halls, and the usual faculty meeting looming at the end of the day. I had mentally prepared for the long evening ahead, a routine I had grown accustomed to over the years. But then, out of nowhere, the principal announced the meeting was canceled. A free evening. It felt like an unexpected gift, a rare chance to step away from the grind and do something spontaneous. On my way home, an idea sparked. What if I surprised Terry with a special night? It had been too long since we'd done something just for us. I stopped by her favorite bakery to pick up dessert, imagining her face lighting up when she saw it. As I drove, I rehearsed the plan. In my head, a simple but thoughtful gesture to show her that I still cared, still noticed the little things. The house was quieter than usual when I arrived, but I didn't think much of it. I set down my bags and got to work, prepping her favorite dish, setting the table and lighting a few candles to create the perfect ambiance. For once, I felt like I was ahead of the curve, taking the initiative to bring some romance back into our lives. But as I moved through the house, a strange unease began to creep in. Looking back, I can't explain why the air felt different that evening, heavier somehow. Maybe it was the silence or the way the shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far. Whatever it was, it left a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. I brushed it off, focusing on my plans for the night, unaware that the evening would unfold in ways I never could have imagined. The moment I stepped through the door, something felt off. It wasn't obvious at first, just subtle details that didn't add up. Terry's bag, usually tossed on the hallway chair, was sitting on the kitchen counter. It was such a small thing, but it made me pause. I shrugged it off and told myself to focus on the surprise I was planning. But as I moved further into the house, the oddities only multiplied. I glanced down the hallway and saw her shoes kicked off in a haphazard way, along with clothes strewn across the floor. That wasn't like her. Terry was neat, methodical even. The sight of her things scattered everywhere made my heart race. And then, just past the heap of clothes, I noticed something else, a pair of shoes. Men's shoes. Shoes that definitely weren't mine. My mind went blank, my pulse pounding in my ears. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head, each more unsettling than the last. I wanted to believe there was some logical explanation, some harmless reason for what I was seeing. But as I stood there staring at those shoes, I knew I couldn't ignore the growing weight in my chest. Taking slow steps forward, I tried to steady my breathing. I wanted answers, but I wasn't sure I was ready for them. As I reached for the clothes on the floor, her clothes, intimate and unmistakably hers, I couldn't help but feel like I was crossing into some uncharted, forbidden territory. What I found would shake the very foundation of everything I thought I knew. Standing in the hallway, my breath caught as I took in the scene before me. The trail of clothes led toward the bedroom, and each step I took felt heavier than the last. My mind struggled to catch up, spinning in circles, searching for explanations that might make this less devastating than it seemed. But with every passing second, the reality became harder to deny. I paused outside the bedroom door, my hand hovering above the handle. A part of me wanted to turn back, to leave the house and pretend I hadn't seen anything. But curiosity and anger surged through me, propelling me forward. As I pushed the door open, the muffled sounds I had ignored earlier grew clearer, sharper, like daggers to my chest. The sight that greeted me left no room for doubt. There they were, oblivious to my presence, caught in a moment that shattered my world. My heart sank, but it also burned with a fiery mix of betrayal and rage. Everything I had done, all the effort I had poured into keeping us afloat, now felt like a cruel joke. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. All I could do was stand there, frozen, as the reality of their betrayal consumed me. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I wasn't just angry. I was heartbroken, gutted in a way I didn't know was possible. But beneath the devastation, a new resolve began to form. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble, not yet. Instead, I quietly stepped away, knowing that the confrontation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As I stepped away from the bedroom, the wave of emotions threatened to drown me. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, but I held on to a thin thread of control. Losing it right then wouldn't help. I needed clarity, answers, and, most of all, a plan. My breathing was shallow, my hands trembling, but I managed to steady myself. If I was going to confront this, I needed to understand the full extent of what was happening. I moved through the house, scanning for details I might have missed earlier. It was strange how your mind sharpens in moments like these. A forgotten jacket draped over a chair, an unfamiliar scent lingering in the air, even the faint sound of their voices. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving. The more I found, the more undeniable it became. A part of me wanted to burst into the room and let my emotions take over. But I resisted. Instead, I focused on gathering every bit of information I could, observing everything that might help me later. It wasn't just about confronting Terry anymore. It was about understanding what had led to this moment and how I would navigate the wreckage it left behind. As I paced the living room, anger and sadness clashed within me, but another feeling began to creep in: determination. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I wouldn't let it destroy the person I had worked so hard to become. And while I didn't know exactly how to proceed, one thing was clear. I had to face the truth head on, no matter how painful it was. That night, I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, the images came rushing back. The sounds, the sights, the gut-wrenching confirmation of what I'd feared. It wasn't just the betrayal that tore at me. It was the sense of losing everything I thought I knew about my life. How does someone recover from something like this? I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, replaying every moment leading up to that night. The late-night silences, the subtle changes in Terry's behavior, the way her laughter had faded over time. It all seemed so obvious now. I wasn't just grieving the relationship. I was mourning the trust and love I thought we had. It felt like a piece of me had been ripped away, leaving an emptiness I didn't know how to fill. The questions were relentless. Was it my fault? Did I miss something I should have seen sooner? Had I not been enough? The more I tried to answer them, the more I spiraled. It was exhausting, this endless loop of self-doubt and anger. But in the quiet moments, a small voice in the back of my mind reminded me that this wasn't my burden to bear alone. This was her choice, not my failure. Still, the pain was raw, searing through me like an open wound. And yet, beneath it all, I felt a spark, a faint glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but I clung to it, knowing I needed something to guide me out of this darkness. By the next morning, I was running on fumes, the sleepless night weighing heavily on me. But something had shifted. The raw pain from the night before was still there, gnawing at me. But it was now accompanied by a strange clarity. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could decide what to do next. If I stayed in this limbo of disbelief and heartbreak, it would consume me. I needed a plan. The first step was understanding the full scope of the situation. I quietly began piecing together everything I had observed: her shifts in behavior, the unfamiliar details around the house, even small clues I might have missed in the past. It wasn't about obsessing over the betrayal. It was about arming myself with the truth so I could confront this head-on. Despite my anger, I knew I couldn't rush into a confrontation unprepared. I needed to approach this with a level head, no matter how hard it was. So I focused on gathering more evidence, piecing together the timeline of her actions. It wasn't about revenge or exposing her. It was about finding closure for myself, ensuring I had all the answers before taking the next step. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, a deliberate series of choices that left no room for doubt. And while the realization hurt, it also strengthened my resolve. I wasn't going to let this break me. Instead, I began outlining what my next steps would look like, starting with how I would reclaim my own sense of control. Once the decision was made, a sense of quiet determination took over. I wasn't about to make a scene or give Terry the satisfaction of knowing how deeply she'd hurt me. Not yet anyway. My focus shifted to creating an exit strategy, a way to separate our lives as cleanly and quickly as possible. If she had chosen to break our trust, then I would choose to rebuild my life, one step at a time. I began researching apartments, trying to find something that fit my needs. It was surreal, looking for a new home while pretending everything was fine. Each listing I scrolled through felt like a small step toward freedom, a chance to start fresh without the weight of her betrayal hanging over me. I told myself that this was about reclaiming my independence. Packing was the hardest part. I couldn't let her notice anything out of the ordinary, so I started small. Boxes of old books, clothes I didn't wear often, little things she wouldn't miss. Each item I packed felt like a tiny victory, a reminder that I was taking back control. It was a slow process, but with every box, the burden on my shoulders seemed to lighten just a little. I didn't have all the answers yet, and I wasn't sure what the future would look like. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay here. This house, once filled with love and laughter, had become a prison of painful memories. Leaving wasn't just about walking away from her. It was about walking towards something better, something I deserved. The day I closed the door behind me for the last time, I didn't look back. There was no point. That house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, had become a reminder of everything I wanted to leave behind. The weight on my chest was still there, but it felt different now. Less like a burden and more like a challenge I was ready to face. Starting over wasn't easy. The new apartment was small, quiet, and unfamiliar. But it was mine, and that made all the difference. I spent my evenings unpacking, rearranging, and imagining what my life could look like now. It wasn't about replacing what I'd lost, but about building something entirely new. Something stronger, more honest, and, above all, mine. Every day brought small victories. I started going to the gym, picking up old hobbies, and reconnecting with friends I'd drifted away from. It felt strange at first, like I was rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. But with every step, I began to feel more like me again. A version of myself I thought I'd lost in the chaos of betrayal. The journey wasn't over, and there were still moments when the pain crept back in. But I refused to let it define me. This chapter of my life wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about resilience, growth, and the unshakable belief that I deserved better. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what the future might hold.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.